One of the least understood areas in growing custard apples is the pruning and training of trees. There are several systems that can be used to grow custard apples. Today, we will look at the vertical trellis system. Phil and Paddy Stacey have been growing custard apples on their farm in Alstonville using the vertical trellis system for several years. I asked them to tell us about how they got into using the vertical trellis.
Yes, well, 33 years ago we planted custard apples, African bride custard apples, and low-chill stone fruit on vase trees. And we found in time that these trees became very difficult to manage. So with the stone fruit, I was one of the first to adopt a palmet system of growing them, and the ease of production, and particularly picking the trees, harvest, was such that I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could have a small tree, maintain a small tree with our custard apples, which had grown into very large trees and difficult to manage. Meanwhile, research work was being done at Maroochy Research Station into trellising systems. I took an immediate interest in these trellising systems and decided to conduct my own trials down here. The trellising systems we have today are a result of that work.
So Phil, how have you set up your vertical trellis?
Yes, our vertical trellis system uses 3 wires supported by pre-stressed concrete posts. In these posts, I drill holes at spacings of 80 from the ground, 140 to the next wire, and 190 to the top wire. I have found using a riser tube in the holes reduces or eliminates the abrasion of the wire in the concrete post. It's important to do this with any system you use. Abrasion is a factor. Now, the distance between the posts in the row should not exceed 100 metres. I work in a grid system of support posts of 13 3/4 metres or thereabouts, give or take, which gives me 4 trees between each supporting set of posts. The wire I have used is 3.15 grow wire, and for tensioning of this wire I use the gripples. I found the gripples to be the most effective way of tensioning the wire system. In this case, I've used concrete anchors for simplicity and convenience and cost.
What are some of the benefits of growing custard apples on this system?
The trees on the trellis are easier to work with, particularly at harvest, because we can reach everything from the ground. Because of improved access, orchard floor management is far easier. Mowing, weed control, irrigation, mulching are far easier. The open canopy allows for far better light penetration and spray penetration, thus reducing the amount of chemical that you need, and we have found that there is less insect damage. It appears that there is less insect damage due to this open canopy because there's less places for the insects to hide. Because of the open canopy, fungicide control appears to be much more efficient also. The trees dry out quickly by comparison to a vase tree, where the trees often remain wet or the under canopy remains wet for days.
Paddy and Phil have been training their trees to the vertical trellis system for several seasons. I asked Paddy to show us what steps were involved.
When you plant a tree on a trellis, you must make sure that the shoots are coming out to the sides and not coming out this way, because when the shoots come out, they have to come out in the line of the wire. When you plant the tree, there are 2 ways of getting that first lateral. I use 3 buds above the wire and I cut. And I use an easy tie. These are the medium easy ties, which are reusable. You can take them on and off. Once the buds have come away, you then develop your bottom branches. The other way of doing it is to chop below the wire And the bud that comes away, you can then develop an upright and 2 side shoots from that bud. So either way is quite acceptable. This KJ was planted 10 months ago, and I'm now going to develop the first laterals on the first wire. I've left 2 branches on either side, and I could either choose the top one and pull it down, or I can choose the bottom one and pull it up. Either way, it doesn't really matter. But I've chosen in this case the ones that are closest to the wire. So I've chosen this one here and this one here, and I simply will chop those ones out, and so that although I'm not developing the next wire, the next lateral on the next wire, I want to hold this lateral straight, and so I'll put an easy tie to stop it blowing around in the breeze. And now I can concentrate this season on just developing this lateral here. Here we have an 18-month-old KJ, and last summer I developed the bottom branch, and it's bushed up very nicely, and we'll probably get a little bit of fruit off that this year. But I need to take away a bit of this bushing, and I'm about to develop the second stage. So I will just cut back this foliage here so that I can see what's happening up here. And I've allowed quite a few branches to come away, so I have choice of which ones I want. And I've chosen this one and that one, so I will take all the others off. And it now leaves me with 1 branch on this side, and it leaves me with 2 branches on this side. I'll take the upper branch, but I often leave that lower branch just in case something happens to this one and I lose it, so I've got another one. And I get my easy tie. I tie that one down. I tie that one down, and I'm done. Now, I don't want this one to develop this year. I want this one to get nice and strong. So I will just either tip or take the top out. So I'll just take the top out like that. So branches will develop up there, but I will keep clipping them back. I want to get strength in this branch this year. Next summer I will develop that branch up there. We're looking at a 3-year-old KJ on a vertical trellis here, and this has got all the 3 layers fully formed, and it's now ready to bear fruit. And as you can see, all the laterals have been pruned nice and short. This was done about 3 weeks ago, and they're now all starting to shoot out little flowers here. So we should get hopefully 1 piece of fruit, maybe 2 pieces of fruit on each lateral. We don't want to overburden it because it's only 3 years old, and we do want good sized fruit. Once you have your tree fully established with your 6 laterals, you then are concentrating on fruit production. And the laterals are pruned relatively short with the idea of getting 1 to 2 pieces of fruit off each lateral. They're evenly spaced, and they need to be of a good size. We say pencil thickness. You don't want to leave really thin laterals because they tend to produce quite small fruit. Anything that might come off between these laterals should be removed. You want to maintain your fruiting wood only off these side laterals. If the side lateral becomes sick and it's not developing properly, you can cut it off and try and start again with another lateral coming further down. When you first start off training the trees, you end up with a lot of easy ties along each lateral, but in the end you probably only need 3 easy ties along each lateral, and they can be taken off and reused. Their lifespan is quite long.
So that's a guide on how trees should be trained to the vertical trellis system. So how cost effective is it? I asked Australia's leading custard apple researcher, Dr. Alan George, to explain some of the financial benefits of trellising custard apples compared to other planting systems.
Well, yields on the open vase trees are generally fairly low. We're normally looking at between 12 to 15 tonnes per hectare, which is around about 3,000 trays per hectare. With the vertical trellis system, we would expect yields in the vicinity of 25 to 30 tonnes per hectare, which is around about 4,000 to 5,000 trays per hectare, and at an average cost per tray of about $25, that equates to about $120,000 gross per hectare. I should clarify those yields on the vertical trellis system. In some years you get excessively wet weather, which will greatly reduce your fruit set. With the vertical trellis system, you get a much more concentrated flowering period because of the smaller size of the tree, and the rate of leaf defoliation causes a more concentrated flowering compared with the open vase trees, which are much bigger trees, and the trees defoliate from the outside inwards, so they flower over a longer time period. Consequently, with the vertical trellis system, if you do get very wet weather, your fruit set can be reduced, so you may not reach those maximum yields of 4,000 to 5,000 trays per hectare every year. Keep that in mind when you're actually looking at your yield and potential returns.
How do the capital costs of the vertical trellis system compare with other planting systems?
The capital costs for establishing the vertical system are obviously higher than for the open vase system. You've got the cost of purchasing extra trees because your planting density is going from 400 trees per hectare up to about 800. You've also got the cost of the trellis posts, and you've got the additional costs of training the trees for the first 2 to 3 years. Those additional costs, while they increase your cost of production, are more than compensated for by the extra early yields on the vertical trellis trees. And we would expect that the break-even point would be at least 2, maybe 3 years earlier than for open vase trees.
What are the other benefits of the vertical trellis system?
There are other benefits of growing trees on the vertical trellis system. There are advantages in terms of cost reductions once trees reach maturity on the trellis system. These cost reductions are due to the smaller tree size, so costs associated with pruning the trees, thinning the trees and harvesting the trees are much less. Also, because the trees are smaller, the amount of spray volumes and amounts of insecticides and fungicides that need to be used are also greatly reduced.
So is the vertical trellis system ready for growers to adopt now?
At this stage, the vertical trellis systems are experimental, and we certainly need more years of data to actually see what the full potential of this trellis system is.
Paddy, does the vertical trellis system work well for all varieties?
Over the years we have tried different varieties, but the only one that we have found suitable so far is the KJ Pinks.
You've been trialling this system for several years now. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages of the vertical trellis approach?
In terms of the disadvantages, although we've found it very cost effective, to put in a trellis structure is a lot more expensive than putting in a conventional vase planting. The training of the trees is also fairly time consuming, but in the end is worth it. And if you're harvesting in the cooler climates, if you don't have enough canopy on your trees, you do tend to get a little bit more splitting of the fruit. On the trellis system, you have to make allowance for that and keep a little bit more foliage on your trees. As far as the advantages go, there are many. I could talk for half an hour about the advantages, but and Phil has already mentioned quite a lot of the advantages. But from my perspective, to get somebody who's never really pruned a custard apple tree before to go out, it's very easy to teach them how to prune a trellis. The harvesting is a breeze. You just push your trolley along, or your picking container and pick directly into that container. And as Phil said, the pest and disease management is a lot easier. Orchard management, keeping weed control, mulching is much easier to do on a straight row than a round tree. So there's lots of, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages tremendously.
Patty and Phil, you've tried numerous growing systems. In your opinion, is the vertical trellis worth trying?
Although this is still a work in progress, trellising systems have proved to us to be far more efficient than any other system that we've tried in the past.
And from my perspective, I've just found that the pruning and the harvesting of the custard apples off the trellis system is just far easier for me.
The vertical trellis is just one of the growing options used by custard apple growers in Australia. A full description of the different growing systems currently used is available in the Manual for Pruning and Training Custard Apple Trees, available through Custard Apples Australia. New tree training systems such as the vertical trellis are still in the experimental stage of development. However, they show great potential to increase productivity and may be worth trialling on your farm.